Biblical scholars have argued for years about the location of these holy sites. Now, one man says he might have found them.
A remote mountain peak is hiding a secret that is 3,000 years old, and a new radar scan just caught it on camera.
Well, this investigation actually started, Chris, 20 years ago, and we are investigating 3 different mountains, 2 in Saudi Arabia, by the way.
The location is not the one people usually visit in Egypt, but a heavily guarded spot deep in the desert that the government keeps under lock and key. When the drone data came back, it showed straight lines and math patterns in the rock that prove humans were building something massive here a long time ago. It feels like the ground is finally talking and telling us that the burning bush story is more real than anyone thought. Hidden world under the rock. The discovery started when a drone flew over a peak that most people are not allowed to visit. This drone was carrying a special sensor that can see through solid stone by bouncing radio waves deep into the earth. Most radar can only see a few feet down, but this one was 100 times more powerful than the stuff used by normal construction crews. When the computer finished drawing the maps of what was under the mountain, the results were not what anyone expected. Instead of just solid rock or messy cave systems, the radar showed straight lines and sharp corners that formed rooms and hallways. These are building marks that prove someone was living and working deep inside the mountain a very long time ago. This kind of perfect shape does not happen by accident because nature likes to make things round and bumpy rather than straight and flat. For starters, hands down, this is the most solid evidence anyone has found in decades. The data shows rooms that are 30 feet wide and tunnels that stretch for hundreds of feet into the dark. People are calling this a major break in the case because it matches stories that have been told for 3,000 years. It is a big deal because it shows that the mountain was more than just a pile of dirt. It was a place where people actually stayed. This discovery is changing the way people think about the old stories because now there is a real place to look. Everything seems to be lining up with the idea that something massive happened at this spot. Things get even more interesting when looking at where this mountain is located. Clues in the Arabian Desert. The mountain in the radar scan is not where the tour buses go in Egypt. Instead, the data points to a peak called Jabal al-Lawz in the northwest corner of Saudi Arabia. This area is very hard to get to because the government keeps it behind tall fences and guards it day and night. For a long time, people wondered why the area was so secret, and now the radar might have given us the answer. The peak of this mountain is very strange because the top is dark and looks like it was burned by a giant fire while the rest of the mountain is light brown. People who have studied the area say the rocks on top were changed by extreme heat that did not come from a volcano. Down at the bottom of the mountain, there is a massive rock that is over 60 feet tall, and it is split right down the middle. Even though this is one of the driest places on Earth, there are marks on the rock showing that huge amounts of water once flowed through the cracks. It looks exactly like the descriptions of the places mentioned in ancient writings where water came out of a stone. Near the base, there are also drawings of cows and bulls carved into the rocks, which is weird because cows do not live in that desert. Basically, everyone is obsessed with how many details match the old stories perfectly. There are even 12 large stone pillars set up in a row that look like they were part of a big ceremony. What most people do not realize is that these physical clues have been there for thousands of years just waiting for a drone to prove what is underneath them. The story of how this mountain became famous is just as wild as the radar results. Legend of the Holy Monastery. Even though the new radar points to Saudi Arabia, people have been visiting a different mountain in Egypt for a very long time. This place is home to St. Catherine's Monastery, which was built over 1,500 years ago. The monastery was built to protect a very special plant that the monks believe is the actual burning bush from the story of Moses. This bush is still alive today, and the monks have been taking care of it every single day for centuries. It is a living piece of history that brings pilgrims from all over the world to see it with their own eyes. The monastery also has one of the oldest libraries in the world, with books that are so old they have to be kept in special rooms. These monks stayed in the desert through wars and hard times because they believed the ground they were standing on was holy. They also show visitors a well where they say Moses met his wife after helping her get water. For a long time, this was the only place people thought could be the real Mount Sinai because the tradition was so strong. However, the new radar data is making people look twice at the old maps. It is hard to argue with a radar that can see through rock, but the history of the monastery is still very important. It shows how much people care about finding the truth and how far they will go to protect it. Even if the location is different, the heart of the story remains the same for everyone who visits. Finding real proof in the desert is much harder than it looks on television. Why the ground stays quiet. Archaeologists have a tough time finding evidence of people who moved around a lot. The people in the old stories lived in tents and did not build big cities out of brick or stone. When a group lives in a tent for a year and then moves away, they do not leave much behind for us to find thousands of years later. Fire pits get covered by sand and the wind blows away any trash or tools they might have dropped. In the desert, a pile of ash can vanish in just 1 week if the wind is strong enough. This is why some people say there is no proof, but the truth is that the evidence is just very small. If you look for a giant palace, you will find nothing, but if you look for tiny marks in the dirt, you might see where a tent pole once stood. Another reason the ground is so quiet is that ancient kings liked to erase history if it made them look bad. The leaders in Egypt were known for smashing statues and scraping names off walls if they lost a battle or a group of workers. If a huge group of people left Egypt and caused a lot of trouble, the king would probably make sure nobody ever wrote it down. This is why we do not see the story in the official Egyptian records, because they only wanted to remember the good times. So the fact that we do not have a lot of writing from that time does not mean the story is fake. It just means the people involved were either moving fast or trying to hide what happened. Sometimes a group of people can disappear so well that they become a legend. Lessons from the lost people. History is filled with gaps, silences, and sudden disappearances that defy explanation. While we often focus on the empires that rose and the monuments that remain, there is another, more shadowy part of history where entire civilizations seem to evaporate into thin air. Perhaps the most famous and baffling of these events involves the group known as the 10 Lost Tribes. Hundreds of years after the original stories of the mountain and the Exodus were first whispered, 10 distinct tribes were uprooted by a massive, encroaching empire. They were taken from their homes, marched into the vastness of the East, and then, quite simply, they vanished from the record. They did not all die in a single catastrophic event, nor is there evidence of a mass execution that wiped them from the earth. Instead, something far more intriguing happened. They stopped being a distinct entity. They likely blended into the populations around them, adopting new customs, languages, and names until their original identity was diluted into the background noise of history. This phenomenon teaches us a critical lesson about the ancient world, that a huge population can go missing not by dying out, but by changing their ways or moving to new lands where they remain unrecognized. Scholars and treasure hunters alike have long speculated on where these people went. A prevailing theory suggests that these tribes utilized the intricate web of trade routes that crisscrossed the deserts near the secret mountain. These were not mere footpaths. They were the superhighways of the ancient world, complex networks known as the Incense Route or the Silk Road, where caravans of camels carried spices, gold, frankincense, and textiles across thousands of miles. Along these dusty, sun-scorched paths lay a series of caravanserais, small, fortified stops with wells and high walls designed to keep travelers safe from bandits and wild animals at night. If the people from the stories utilized these roads, their tracks would be hopelessly mixed in with the millions of merchants, soldiers, and nomads who traveled there over the centuries. It creates a sort of historical camouflage. Trying to identify a specific group of refugees on these routes is almost impossible. It is like trying to find one specific person in a crowded stadium after the game is over and the crowd is surging toward the exits. The anonymity of the road provided the perfect cover. The fact that these tribes disappeared so thoroughly proves that the desert is an exceptional place to hide if you do not want to be found. It swallows secrets. The shifting sands and the harsh winds erode physical evidence, while the constant movement of trade erases cultural footprints. However, this disappearance also serves as a reminder of our own limitations. Just because we cannot see someone in the history books does not mean they were not real. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. For centuries, we relied on surface observations and crumbling scrolls to tell us the truth. But now, the radar is helping us see things that were lost for over 2,000 years. We are entering an era where technology allows us to peer through the veil of time, finding the echoes of those who walked these paths before us. The newest data is leading us back to the same uncomfortable questions about what is truly real and how much of our history remains buried just beneath our feet. Final clues and the big question. The introduction of drone-mounted ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR technology has opened a door that was bolted shut for a very long time. We are no longer limited to scratching at the surface with trowels and brushes. We can now strip away the layers of sand and stone digitally. By showing us that there are real, substantial structures buried under the mountain, this technology has given us something we can finally touch and measure. We are moving from the realm of myth into the realm of data. What the radar reveals is startling. We are looking at outlines of tunnels, voids, and chambers that were made with a deliberate plan. Nature creates caves and fissures, but it rarely creates straight lines, right angles, or perfect geometric alignments. These structures do not happen by accident. They imply architecture, engineering, and purpose. The deeper we look, the more the mystery deepens, and the more we realize how much of the context we are still missing. This raises the most significant question of all. What was this mountain? Was it merely a secret military outpost or a storage facility for ancient travelers moving wealth across the desert? Or was it truly, as the ancient texts suggest, a place where the divine intersected with the human, where something from another world came down to speak to a man? The physical evidence is confusing. The straight lines and perfect corners tell us that humans were there, utilizing tools and mathematics. But they do not tell us why they built such a complex, hidden place in such an inhospitable environment. The geopolitical silence surrounding the site adds another layer of intrigue. Many researchers and casual observers wonder if the Saudi government is keeping the mountain a secret because they already know what lies inside. The area has been fenced off, guarded, and restricted for decades. It has been missing from public access for years, but this key detail strikes a chord with anyone who takes the time to study the maps. Why guard a pile of rocks unless those rocks tell a story that someone wants to control? Could this be the most important discovery of our time, or is the desert just playing tricks on our eyes? Do you think the government should open the mountain to everyone? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter of this mystery.